There is something moving through your bloodstream right now that didn't exist 100 years ago. It has no smell, no taste, no warning sign. You cannot feel it entering your body, and in most cases, you will never feel it leave. Scientists have found it in human blood, in lung tissue, in the placenta of unborn babies, and most recently, inside human brain tissue itself. It is not a virus. It is not a bacteria. It is plastic, broken down into pieces so small they are measured in micrometers and nanometers, invisible to the naked eye, yet present in nearly every person who has been tested for it across the planet. For decades, plastic felt like something external. A bottle, a bag, a container you could throw away and forget. But what researchers have discovered over the last 10 years has completely rewritten that story. Plastic does not disappear when it breaks down. It fragments, smaller and smaller, until it becomes something that can pass through the lining of your gut, slip into your bloodstream, cross into your organs, and in some documented cases, cross the blood-brain barrier itself, one of the most protected boundaries in the entire human body. This is not a future problem. This is not something happening to someone else, somewhere else. This is happening inside you right now, as you listen to this. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people have no idea how deeply this has already settled into their biology. But here is what makes this moment different from simple fear. Because alongside this growing body of unsettling research, scientists have also begun uncovering something genuinely hopeful. Your body is not defenseless. It has systems, ancient systems, built over millions of years of evolution that are capable of identifying foreign material, breaking it down, and clearing it out. The question is not whether your body can fight back. The question is whether you are giving it what it needs to do so, or whether you are unknowingly working against it every single day. So let's talk about what is actually happening inside the human body when it comes to microplastics, where this material is coming from, why it has become so difficult to avoid, and most importantly, what real evidence-based steps you can take starting today to reduce the burden on your system and support the natural processes your body already has in place to protect you. To understand the solution, you first have to understand the scale of the problem, because it is far larger than most people realize. Microplastics are technically defined as plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters. Some are intentionally manufactured at that size, like the microbeads once common in exfoliating face washes before many countries began banning them. But the vast majority come from something far more mundane and far harder to escape. They come from larger plastic items slowly breaking down. Sunlight, friction, heat, and physical wear cause plastic bottles, packaging, synthetic clothing fibers, car tires, and food containers to shed countless tiny fragments over time. These fragments don't biodegrade in any meaningful human timescale. A plastic bottle thrown away today may still be shedding particles into the environment 100 years from now. And here is the part that surprises most people. We are not just talking about plastic floating in the ocean far away from daily life. We are talking about plastic in the air you breathe inside your own home. Synthetic carpets, polyester clothing, and foam furniture release microscopic fibers every single day, simply through normal use. Researchers have found that something as ordinary as folding a load of laundry made from polyester or nylon releases plumes of microfibers into the air around you. You inhale some of them, they settle on your food, they settle in the dust on your countertops. Then there is the matter of what touches your food directly. Plastic cutting boards shed thousands of microscopic particles every time a knife runs across their surface. Plastic kettles release particles into hot water as it boils. Tea bags, many of which are sealed with a thin plastic mesh, have been shown in laboratory studies to release billions of microplastic and nanoplastic particles into a single cup of hot water. Plastic containers used to reheat food in the microwave release significantly more particles when heated than when left at room temperature, because heat accelerates the breakdown of plastic polymers. Even something as simple as bottled water carries a hidden burden. Studies analyzing bottled water from major global brands have consistently found hundreds of thousands of plastic particles per liter, many of them nanoplastics so small that conventional filtration methods cannot catch them. This doesn't mean tap water is automatically free of plastic either, since municipal water systems have also tested positive for microplastic contamination in various regions around the world. But the concentration found in bottled water has, in multiple independent studies, been measured significantly higher. Think about how many of these exposures are quietly built into an ordinary morning. coffee brewed in a plastic-lined machine, poured into a to-go cup lined with a thin plastic film to keep it from leaking. Breakfast eaten off a plate that was once microwaved in its plastic packaging. A protein bar pulled from a plastic wrapper. A bottle of water grabbed on the way out the door. None of these moments feel significant on their own. None of them come with any sensation, any taste, any visible sign that something has shifted. And that, more than anything else, is exactly why this issue has been able to grow so quietly for so long. There was never a single dramatic moment that would have made anyone stop and reconsider. Just an accumulation of thousands of small, unremarkable choices, repeated daily, for years, by nearly everyone living in the modern world simultaneously. So by now, a clear picture should be forming. This isn't about one obvious culprit you can simply remove from your life and call it solved. This is about an entire ecosystem of modern convenience, woven so deeply into daily routines that most people are absorbing these particles dozens, possibly hundreds of times a day without ever realizing it. Which brings us to the question that matters most. What happens once these particles are inside you? When you ingest or inhale microplastic particles, your body treats them the way it treats any foreign material it cannot recognize as food, oxygen, or anything biologically useful. The immune system responds. White blood cells attempt to surround and neutralize the intruder, the same basic defense mechanism your body uses against bacteria or splinters lodged under the skin. But plastic is different from a splinter. It cannot be broken down by digestive enzymes the way food can. It cannot be metabolized the way alcohol or sugar can. In many cases, the immune system simply cannot fully eliminate it, leading to a state scientists describe as chronic low-grade inflammation, a kind of persistent, simmering immune activation that doesn't go away because the underlying irritant never fully leaves. This chronic inflammation is significant because it has been linked in research to a wide range of long-term health concerns, including cardiovascular issues, disrupted hormone signaling, and oxidative stress, a process where unstable molecules called free radicals damage cells faster than the body can repair them. In 2024, researchers studying patients undergoing surgery for blocked arteries discovered something striking. Patients whose arterial plaque contained measurable amounts of microplastics had a significantly higher risk of heart attack, stroke, or death over the following years compared to patients whose plaque did not contain detectable plastic. This was one of the first studies to directly connect the physical presence of microplastics inside the human body to a measurable increase in serious cardiovascular risk, and it sent a wave of concern through the medical research community. Beyond cardiovascular health, researchers have also been investigating how microplastics interact with the endocrine system, the network of glands and hormones that regulate everything from metabolism to reproduction to stress response. Many plastics contain chemical additives, things like phthalates and bisphenols, compounds added during manufacturing to make plastic more flexible or more durable. These additives are known as endocrine disruptors because they can mimic or interfere with the body's natural hormones. When microplastic particles carrying these chemical residues enter the bloodstream, they don't just sit there as inert material, they can actively interact with hormone receptors, potentially throwing off the delicate signaling systems that regulate everything from thyroid function to reproductive health. And then there is the discovery that genuinely shook the scientific world in recent years: the detection of microplastics inside human brain tissue. For a long time, researchers assumed the blood-brain barrier, a highly selective filtration system that protects the brain from harmful substances circulating in the blood, would be enough to keep something as large and foreign as plastic out. But studies analyzing brain tissue samples found measurable concentrations of microplastics, in some cases at levels higher than what was found in the liver or kidneys of the same individuals. Researchers are still working to fully understand what this means for long-term cognitive health, but the mere fact that plastic particles are capable of crossing one of the most protected barriers in human biology has reshaped how seriously the scientific community is taking this issue. The reproductive system has also come under increasing scrutiny. Researchers studying human placental tissue have found microplastic particles embedded within it, raising serious questions about whether developing fetuses are being exposed before they've even taken their first breath. Separate research looking at human testicular tissue found measurable microplastic concentrations there as well, alongside observed correlations with declining sperm counts in some populations over recent decades, though scientists are careful to note that establishing a direct causal link in this area remains an active and ongoing area of research rather than a settled conclusion. and the gut itself, often described by researchers as a kind of second brain because of how extensively it communicates with the nervous system and houses the majority of the body's immune cells, appears to be one of the first and most consistently affected areas. Laboratory studies have shown that microplastic exposure can alter the balance of bacteria living in the digestive tract, potentially disrupting what's known as the gut microbiome, the vast and delicate ecosystem of microorganisms that plays a role in everything from digestion to immune regulation to, increasingly, mood and mental health. An imbalanced gut microbiome has been linked in broader research to a wide range of seemingly unrelated health concerns, which is part of why some researchers now view gut health as an unexpectedly important front line in the body's overall response to microplastic exposure. Now, it would be easy at this point to feel a sense of helplessness. If plastic is in the air, in the water, in the food, in the dust on your shelves, what exactly can a single person realistically do about it? This is where the conversation needs to shift, because the goal was never about achieving some impossible state of zero exposure. That is not realistic, and chasing it would only create unnecessary anxiety. The real, achievable goal is reduction. Lowering your daily exposure as much as reasonably possible while simultaneously supporting the biological systems your body already uses to identify, neutralize, and eliminate foreign material. Because here is the encouraging part of this story. Your body is not a passive container slowly filling up with plastic forever. It has active clearance mechanisms. The liver filters toxins from the blood. The kidneys filter and excrete waste through urine. The digestive system eliminates a significant portion of ingested particles through normal bowel movements before they're ever absorbed. The lymphatic system works to transport and process foreign material throughout the body. These systems were not designed specifically for plastic, because plastic is new, but they were designed to handle foreign, unrecognized substances in general, and research increasingly suggests they can do meaningful work here, especially when supported properly. So let's talk practically. What does supporting that process actually look like in daily life? The first and most immediately controllable factor is what you drink. Water is one of the most consistent daily sources of plastic exposure, primarily because of how it's packaged and heated. Switching from bottled water to filtered tap water using a filtration system specifically designed to capture fine particles can meaningfully reduce one of your largest daily exposure points. If bottled water is unavoidable in certain situations, choosing glass over plastic whenever possible removes an entire category of exposure. And critically, never heating water, coffee, or any beverage inside a plastic container, since heat dramatically accelerates the breakdown of plastic polymers into smaller, more easily absorbed particles. The second major factor is how you store and heat food. Plastic containers, especially older, scratched, or worn ones, shed significantly more particles than newer ones, because physical wear creates more surface area for fragmentation. Switching to glass or stainless steel containers for food storage and absolutely avoiding microwaving food in plastic removes one of the most concentrated sources of ingested microplastics in a typical household. Even something as simple as letting hot food cool slightly before transferring it into any container, plastic or otherwise, reduces the thermal stress that triggers particle release. Tea drinkers in particular should pay close attention here. Many popular teabag brands use a plastic mesh material, often polypropylene or nylon, to seal the bag. Laboratory analysis has shown that steeping these bags in near boiling water can release an extraordinary number of particles into a single cup. Switching to loose-leaf tea with a metal infuser, or seeking out brands that explicitly use plastic-free, compostable tea bags eliminates this almost entirely. The kitchen itself deserves a closer look too. Plastic cutting boards are a quiet but significant source of ingested microplastics simply through the repeated friction of cutting. One frequently cited estimate suggests that a single plastic cutting board used over the course of a year for normal food preparation can shed tens of thousands of microscopic particles directly into the food being prepared on it. Switching to wood or bamboo cutting boards, particularly for foods that require a lot of chopping, like vegetables, meat, and herbs, can reduce this source meaningfully over time. Wood surfaces do require slightly more care, since they need to be properly dried and occasionally oiled to prevent bacterial growth, but the trade-off is generally considered worthwhile given what we now understand about plastic particle shedding. Non-stick cookware coated with certain synthetic compounds has its own set of concerns as well, particularly when that coating becomes scratched or worn, which accelerates the release of both microplastic particles and certain chemical residues into food during cooking. Many people are now shifting towards stainless steel or cast iron as safer long-term alternatives, both of which, when properly maintained, can last for decades without the same degradation concerns. Even something as ordinary as a plastic colander, a plastic mixing bowl, or plastic kitchen utensils used for stirring hot food on the stove contribute to this same pattern. Heat and friction are the two primary forces that accelerate plastic degradation, and a kitchen is, by its nature, an environment full of both. Gradually replacing high-friction, high-heat plastic tools, the spatula you use on a hot pan, the spoon you stir boiling pasta with wood, silicone, or metal alternatives, closes off several small but frequent exposure points that most people never think to question. Food packaging is another area worth understanding more deeply. Many processed and packaged foods, especially those wrapped in plastic film or stored in plastic trays, have direct, prolonged contact with plastic surfaces, sometimes for weeks before they're purchased. Fatty foods in particular, things like cheese, deli meats, and butter, tend to absorb more plastic-associated chemical residue than drier foods, because fat is especially effective at binding with the chemical compounds found in plastic packaging. Choosing fresh, unpackaged produce and proteins when reasonably available, and transferring packaged food into glass storage as soon as possible after purchase rather than leaving it in its original plastic wrapping, can meaningfully reduce this particular pathway of exposure over time. Clothing and laundry represent another exposure pathway that most people never think about. Synthetic fabrics like polyester, nylon, and acrylic shed microfibers every time they're worn, washed, or even just moved through the air. Washing synthetic clothing in a specially designed filter bag or installing a filter on your washing machine specifically designed to capture microfibers before they enter the wastewater system reduces both your personal exposure and your environmental contribution. Choosing natural fiber clothing like cotton, wool, or linen when replacing worn-out items gradually shifts your household's overall fiber footprint away from synthetic material. Air quality inside the home matters more than most people assume as well. Regularly vacuuming with a vacuum that has a high-efficiency particulate filter, dusting surfaces with a damp cloth rather than a dry one to avoid simply redistributing particles into the air, and increasing ventilation by opening windows when outdoor air quality allows, all contribute to lowering the concentration of airborne microplastic fibers circulating inside your living space. Now, beyond simply reducing intake, there's a second part of this conversation that deserves just as much attention, which is supporting your body's internal ability to process and eliminate what it does encounter. Fiber plays a notably important role here. Dietary fiber, found in vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains, plays a direct role in digestive health and elimination. Research has shown that adequate fiber intake helps bind to various substances in the digestive tract, supporting their movement out of the body through regular bowel function, rather than allowing prolonged exposure time in the gut, where absorption into the bloodstream becomes more likely. A diet rich in diverse plant fiber sources supports a healthier, more efficient digestive transit time overall, which matters significantly when you're talking about reducing the window of opportunity for any foreign particle, plastic included, to cross from the gut into systemic circulation. Some early research has specifically looked at fermented foods, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, and plain yogurt with live cultures, for their potential role in supporting a healthier gut microbiome composition, which in turn may help the digestive system process and move along foreign particles more efficiently rather than allowing them to linger. Antioxidant-rich foods deserve attention too, given what we know about the oxidative stress associated with microplastic exposure. Foods naturally high in antioxidants like berries, leafy greens, colorful vegetables, and certain spices like turmeric help neutralize the free radicals generated when the immune system responds to foreign material. This doesn't eliminate microplastics from the body directly, but it helps protect cells from some of the downstream damage associated with the inflammatory response those particles can trigger. Foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids like fatty fish, walnuts, and flaxseed have also drawn research interest for their broader anti-inflammatory properties, which may help offset some of the chronic low-grade inflammation associated with ongoing microplastic exposure, even if they aren't removing the particles themselves. Hydration itself plays a quiet but essential role as well. The kidneys rely on adequate water intake to filter the blood efficiently and excrete waste products through urine. Chronic mild dehydration, which research suggests affects a significant portion of the general population without them even realizing it, can reduce the efficiency of this filtration process over time. Simply maintaining consistent, adequate water intake throughout the day, ideally from a well-filtered source given everything discussed earlier, supports one of your body's primary elimination pathways. Personal care products represent a category of exposure that very few people ever connect to this conversation, simply because the application feels so different from eating or drinking. But many cosmetics, lotions, and exfoliants historically contained microbeads, tiny plastic spheres designed to provide a scrubbing texture, before bans in several countries phased much of this out. Even now, many synthetic glitter products used in cosmetics are quite literally microplastic, applied directly to skin and around the eyes, and the skin itself, while a remarkably effective barrier against many substances, is not entirely impermeable, particularly when products are applied to areas with thinner skin or left on for extended periods. Checking ingredient labels for terms like polyethylene, polypropylene, or nylon, and choosing products that use natural exfoliants like sugar, salt, or ground oats instead removes this pathway almost entirely, and it tends to be one of the easier swaps to make since reformulated, plastic-free alternatives have become widely available in recent years. Supporting liver health is another piece of this puzzle worth understanding more fully. The liver is the body's primary filtration organ, responsible for processing and neutralizing a wide range of substances before they can cause more widespread harm elsewhere in the body. It does this largely through a two-phase detoxification process, where harmful compounds are first chemically transformed and then bound to other molecules so they can be safely excreted through bile or urine. Foods like cruciferous vegetables, including broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, contain natural compounds, particularly something called sulforaphane, that have been studied for their ability to support and upregulate these very detoxification enzyme pathways. Garlic and onions, rich in sulfur-containing compounds, have drawn similar research interest for supporting the liver's processing capacity. Reducing the burden on the liver by minimizing alcohol intake and ultra-processed food consumption allows it to function more efficiently in its broader role of processing foreign substances circulating through the bloodstream, rather than being constantly occupied with metabolizing alcohol or synthetic food additives. Exercise, somewhat surprisingly to many people, also plays a meaningful supporting role. Physical activity stimulates lymphatic circulation, since unlike the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system doesn't have its own central pump like the heart. It relies heavily on muscle movement and physical activity to circulate lymphatic fluid throughout the body, a fluid that plays a key role in transporting and processing foreign material as part of the immune response. Regular movement, even something as simple as consistent daily walking, supports this circulation in a way that a sedentary lifestyle simply cannot replicate. Activities that involve rhythmic muscle contraction throughout the body, like brisk walking, swimming, or cycling, are often highlighted specifically for their lymphatic benefits, since the repetitive muscle action effectively works as a secondary pump for fluid that would otherwise move much more sluggishly through the system. Sweating deserves a brief mention here too, though the science on this remains genuinely mixed, and researchers caution against overstating it. Some studies have found trace amounts of certain chemical compounds, including some associated with plastic additives, present in sweat. Whether this represents a meaningful elimination pathway or simply a minor, secondary route compared to the liver and kidneys is still being debated within the research community, so it's worth viewing regular exercise primarily through the lens of its well-established benefits for circulation, lymphatic function, and overall inflammatory regulation, rather than as a primary detoxification strategy on its own. Sleep deserves a mention here too, because it's often the most overlooked piece of any conversation about the body's internal repair and clearance processes. During deep sleep, the body engages in significant repair and regulatory processes, including supporting the lymphatic system, a recently discovered waste clearance pathway specifically within the brain that becomes significantly more active during sleep, essentially flushing cerebrospinal fluid through brain tissue to clear out metabolic waste products accumulated throughout the day. Given what researchers have found about microplastics potentially reaching brain tissue, the importance of consistent quality sleep in supporting the brain's own internal clearance mechanisms becomes even more relevant than previously understood. Poor or insufficient sleep sustained over months and years has been associated in broader research with reduced lymphatic efficiency, which raises an important, if still developing, question about whether chronic sleep deprivation could be quietly compounding the burden of any foreign material accumulating in brain tissue over a lifetime. When you put all of this together, a clear and genuinely manageable picture starts to emerge. This was never about achieving some impossible plastic-free existence, locking yourself away from modern life entirely. That kind of all-or-nothing thinking tends to create more stress than benefit, and stress itself contributes to the same inflammatory pathways we're trying to calm down in the first place. This is about awareness, leading to consistent, sustainable adjustments. Switching the water bottle, changing the cutting board, choosing loose-leaf tea over plastic-sealed bags, letting hot food cool before sealing it in a container, eating more fiber, more antioxidant-rich vegetables, staying properly hydrated, moving your body regularly, and prioritizing real, consistent sleep. It's worth pausing here to acknowledge something honestly. None of these individual changes will eliminate microplastics from your life entirely, because at this point in history, given how deeply this material has saturated the global environment, soil, rainwater, the air over remote mountain ranges far from any city, complete elimination simply isn't realistically possible for anyone, no matter how careful or disciplined they are. That can feel discouraging if you let it. But that was never really the point of doing any of this in the first place. The point is reducing the daily burden your body has to manage, while actively strengthening the very systems designed to protect you: the liver, the kidneys, the digestive tract, the lymphatic system, the immune response itself. Small, consistent choices, repeated daily, compound over months and years into a meaningfully different internal environment than the one you'd be living in by simply continuing on autopilot, never questioning what's touching your food, your water, or the air inside your own home. This is, in many ways, one of the defining health challenges of our era. Not because any single exposure is catastrophic on its own, but because of how invisible, how pervasive, and how cumulative this issue has become across an entire generation. Living through the first widespread era of plastic saturation in human history, we are, in a very real sense, the test subjects in a global experiment that nobody explicitly agreed to participate in, born into a world already saturated with a material that didn't exist for the overwhelming majority of human history. But within that reality lies something important to hold on to. Awareness changes behavior. Behavior, repeated consistently, changes outcomes. And the human body, even now, even after everything it's been quietly absorbing for decades without your knowledge or consent, still retains a remarkable, evolved capacity to defend itself, to filter, to repair, and to adapt when it's finally given the support it needs to do so. The choice in front of you isn't about achieving perfection, and it was never meant to be. It's about direction. Every small adjustment, every conscious decision to reduce exposure and support your body's natural clearance systems moves you a little further away from where you'd otherwise be heading, and a little closer toward giving your body the conditions it needs to function the way it was always designed to. None of it requires perfection, and none of it requires fear. It simply requires attention and the willingness to start somewhere, today, with whatever single change feels most manageable to you right now. That shift, small as it may feel in any single moment, is where real, lasting change in long-term health actually begins.